Hello again, we're back for this week's episode of You Are My Boro with myself, Tom Sean, Scott Wilson, both with our tops on. I hope you were watching last week, or that reference will go straight over your head. Last week, obviously. How are we, Scott? All sound?
Good, yeah, all good, mate. Yeah, all good. I had a day off yesterday. I went and watched Yorkshire-Lancashire cricket at Headingley. So, yeah, I got a little bit of a side this morning, but we'll gloss over that. All ready to go.
I went to watch Mask United Billingham Town last night at Mount Pleasant. I don't know whether it's called Mount Pleasant anymore, but yeah, down there, which was good.
Nice
actually.
Night for that as well, to be fair.
Yeah, Mask won 2-0 and were good. Mask. I used to go watch Mask when I was a kid with my dad. So like Northern League, non-league wise, they have a lot of living.
They're your team.
I like to go see Gisborough Town. Yeah, Mask are probably like the first team I look out for. But yeah, it was good. It was good. It's always good to take in a bit of non-league, Northern League, you know, when you get
and of course
you don't get a chance during the season, really.
No, that's it. No, that's it. It is always nice. But this weekend, you're off to Mansfield.
I'm off to Mansfield on Saturday, yeah. For Boro's first pre-season game in front of a crowd.
Yeah.
The first chance we'll get to see Rob Edwards' side in action. And Edwards talked this week, Scott, in an interview with the club. I thought it was really good. Although it's a pre-season friendly, he said it's important because first impressions matter. And clearly, you know, what he did say is, I hope the fans will acknowledge that it is a friendly and there might not be the momentum or the rhythm in a game that you sometimes, the rhythm in a game that you sometimes want. But he said, we want to build momentum. And I just thought that thing that first impressions matter was an indication that he's going to want to, friendly in mind, but put on as much of a show or as much of a positive display as they can tomorrow.
Yeah, because I think getting a bit of positivity going into the season is going to be important, isn't it? You know, we all know how last season ended, clearly very flat. We'll get to it in a minute in the vid, but, you know, there haven't been the level of incomings yet that probably people hoped for, expected, whatever. You know, I mean, there will be signings at Boro this summer, but clearly the financial position is you know, it doesn't look like Boro are in a position where they can just go out and spend what they want, does it? So I think it's important that there is a degree of positivity heading into the season, especially obviously with there being a new head coach. You know, Rob Edwards is here. This is his team now. He's going to start to put the patterns of play in, the systems, the tack, all of that. But he's going to want, as you know, as many people behind him as he possibly can. And, you know, I'm sure Boro fans want to get excited. They want something to believe in. But understandably, at the end of last season, I think there's going to be a slight element of, well, okay, show us what you've got. Show us what you're doing. Give us something to believe in. And that, you know, that's not the main job of pre-season. Clearly, the main job of pre-season is get the players ready for the first game of the season. That goes without saying. But I do see, as you've alluded to there, that probably this summer more than ever, I think there needs to be a bit of positivity generated. And part of that's going to come from performances in pre-season when fans are there watching their new team.
We'll come back to the friendly and kind of what we're looking out for, really, or the main things that we're looking out for and what we might find out about Boro on Saturday. But transfers then. What's happened since we last spoke last week? Well, nothing major has changed in that nobody's through the door and nobody's left. But there have been developments over the course of last week. We'll start with Callum Britain first, who is Boro's top target at right back. Was left out, missed Blackburn's opening pre-season game against Accrington last week. And Valérien Ismaël really couldn't have been any clearer, couldn't have been any more open in his quotes afterwards with our sister paper, the Lancashire Telegraph, who he said, basically, there's offers in. There's one club in particular who kind of suggested Britain is most interested in, or there's most interest from. That's Boro. And with Britain moving into the last year of his contract, Ismaël said, we need to learn from previous mistakes at Blackburn. We need to do a deal, basically. Well, the deal hasn't yet been done. But kind of yesterday, Thursday, as we're recording on Friday morning, it came out that Britain had been back in training with Blackburn this week. Well, I don't think there's anything really to look into there. Britain has a good relationship with Ismaël, who was previously his manager at Barnsley. All the suggestions are, although he's keen on the move to Boro, he wants to remain professional. He doesn't want to end on a sour note with Blackburn. And also, footballers are well aware, aren't they, that transfer deals, negotiations can take weeks. There's no guarantee that this was going to be wrapped up in a matter of days. So it was never likely that Britain was just going to be completely sidelined or completely ostracised at Blackburn.
No, because as ever with these things, until the deal's done, it's not, is it? It's as simple as that. Now, in some respects, it feels Boro want Britain. Britain wants to come to Boro. Blackburn have accepted, I don't say want to sell, but have accepted that they're almost certainly going to have to sell. So what's the sticking point here? Well, it can only come down to the terms of the deal, can't it? And clearly, while talks have been ongoing this week, there hasn't been a resolution. So the suggestions seem to be that that's not related to Britain. It has to be, you would think, between the two clubs. So, it feels like a deal that will get done. Ideally, if you're Boro, you want it done kind of as soon as you can, don't you? Because Callum Britain is probably going to start the season as Boro's right back because, who else is there? Who else, where are you at in terms of your defensive options?
Well, Luke Ayling's the only other option.
Luke Ayling is the only other option, isn't he? And Ayling can start the season at right back, no problem. But Boro seem to be wanting to sign Britain as their number one right back. So you would think that, where are we now? We're 3 weeks out. So there's still plenty of time to get him through the door and in. But, it is one that has been dragging on this when it feels like there's definitely a deal there to be done. I suspect it will get done next week, but it's, there's clearly something that's still a sticking point, and it can only be the money.
And in the same day that kind of Britain stuff progressed, the first reports emerged from the Hull end of Boro's interest in Alfie Jones. And interestingly, all the soundings from the Hull end are that this is a deal Hull will do. The early reports were that I think it was £2 million. Hull would be unlikely to turn down an offer in that region. There was a fresh report yesterday talking about at the Hull end again, talking about the increased likelihood of Alfie Jones moving to Boro. Well, again, clearly there's no deal agreed there yet. But given all that's going on at Hull with their embargo, the situation they find themselves in, it's no surprise really that they're not looking to offload players, but maybe open to the idea of offloading certain players.
And with that one, you could imagine Boro will feel that there's a deal to be done there, i.e., as you've alluded to, everything that's going on at Hull, Boro probably think they can get a bit of a bargain there if they play their cards right and negotiate right. So that one I could see potentially, spinning out a little bit more, because I think Boro will feel that there's a deal to be done there and that they can probably get it on their terms rather than Hull's terms, as long as they kind of play their cards right with it. I mean, again, no real surprise that they're looking at a centre half, is it? That's one of the positions that we've talked about.
It's a priority for him.
There has to be a priority,
regardless of Vandenberg.
Regardless of what happens with Vandenberg, absolutely. Yes, Darragh Lenihan's back in the mix now, but until we actually see Lenihan, playing and staying fit for a period of weeks and months, you just can't rely on him as one of three really. So. No surprise at all that that's a key area Boro are looking at. What did you make of the Danny Ings stuff?
We'll
end of the pitch.
We'll get just very quickly on Jones before we wrap up there. Wrexham have been linked this week. Now, what we don't know is whether
they have with Ings as well.
Yeah, and so what we don't know is whether there's definitive interest from Wrexham or whether Wrexham are maybe being used by an agent, because Wrexham are a club that will be used by representatives throughout this summer, won't they? So Wrexham and Boro have been linked with Michael Smith this morning. Well, there is absolutely no chance of Michael Smith joining Boro this summer. There's no interest there at all. That is the classic case, isn't it, of obviously leaving Sheffield Wednesday, getting the name out there. So what we don't know is whether that's the case with Jones or whether Wrexham have an interest there. Yeah, Ings. So, well, first of all, we'll come to you because you did the story on Monday. What's your kind of understanding of it? Where are we at with it? And then we'll get to what we make of it.
Okay, so whereas you're right, we're hearing that there's absolutely no interest in Michael Smith. That will not happen. There is an interest in Danny Ings. There's been contact certainly with Ings as representatives, you would imagine with Ings himself, he's a free agent. He obviously left West Ham at the end of the season. My understanding of that is that he's one of 3 or 4 that Boro are considering in the attacking positions. And they're different types of strikers and they're different types of signings. So Danny Ings is clearly, would be coming in. He's in his 30s. He's got a lot of Premier League pedigree. You can see why he ticks a lot of boxes in terms of his experience. He's a proven talent at that level, but he's in his 30s. Surely you wouldn't give him any more than a 2-year deal. He's had his injury issues. He didn't play a lot of football at all for West Ham last season. So that's one type of deal. But I'm told that of all the forwards that Boro are looking at, they're not all in the Ings mould, if you know what I mean. There are players that they would look to sign, younger players who they're interested in, who would be much more maybe of a longer-term project. There's domestic and overseas targets that they're considering, I'm told. So I don't think it's a case of Boro, Ings is the type of striker Boro will end up. It could be because there is interest there, but there's interest from a number of other championship clubs. And while it's a free agent move, Ings has been playing in the Premier League, obviously has played for some big clubs in the Premier League, and you would imagine will be wanting wages that would be at the very top end of what Boro would probably be wanting to pay.
So on Ings, I think like the easy instinctive response is to think of the injuries, to think of injury prone, but actually when you dig deeper, he's barely had an injury for several years now. It's years and years have passed since he had the serious cruciate ligament injury. I think the problem in the last few years has been he's been playing for Premier League clubs where there's been fierce competition for places in the attacking areas and has never really been able to nail down a regular starting spot at the sides he's played for. But I think from Boro's perspective, if you're going to look at it and think, well, clearly you've got Tommy Conway who's going to start. Unless Boro made a remarkable signing this summer up front, Conway was always going to be the starting striker, wasn't he? And so he should be, really. He earned that right last season. The goals he scored, and when you consider he had the injury in the first half of the season, was in and out and mixing it up with Lat in the first half of the season. So Conway is going to start as your nailed on first choice striker, really. Ings in many senses, I think, is quite similar to Conway. So if Edwards loves what Conway offers and kind of wants something similar, but an alternative there, then I can completely understand that. What we don't know yet as well is, and this might be one of the answers we get this weekend, both from the game or when we speak to Edwards. Does he see Marcus Forss as a forward? Nobody considered. I know that might seem, let's see, but nobody considered the idea of Forss playing on the right really until Carrick came in. He signed as a forward. Bergzorg potentially as well. So I can see why it makes sense from Boro's perspective.
I mean, we've had a number of comments along the lines of, well, this is not the project, is it? This is not what we've been kind of saying Boro looking to do. And you're right. I mean, it wouldn't be, would it? On the whole, Boro's messaging in the last 2 or 3 years has been, we want to bring younger players in that we can develop, Morgan Rogers, players from abroad that that will have a sell-on value. Danny Ings clearly on a 2-year deal will not have a sell-on value, will he? But I think with Boro that, I think it's horses for courses to a degree. And I think the issue that they've got up front is, I completely agree with everything you've said there. But what happens if Tommy Conway gets injured in the first game of the season and is out for 3 months? And you've brought in a development signing who might be a great player in... It kind of almost happened with Rodgers, let's be honest, didn't we? Morgan Rogers, for the first month, had to play up front as a central striker for Boro and looked largely like a fish out of water, really. It was only when he came out of the team and started playing in a wider position, played in those Carabao Cup games, got a run, got back into the team, but not as a 9, when he started to look like the player he's now turned into. So I think Boro have to be careful up front. I do understand that there'll be criticism if their kind of striker move is to bring in Danny Ings, because is it Kelechi an actual Mark II? This isn't what Boro have been meant to do. And I do understand those reservations. It doesn't fit the kind of messaging and the general direction that the club want to move in. But I think that's probably a recognition that up front, they're only a Tommy Conway injury away from not really having anybody who can play there, having made the decision to sell Josh Coburn. So I think it's all very well saying that's the general model that we want to follow. And I still think ideally it is for Boro. But they need a forward who, if something happens to Tommy Conway, can play week in, week out in the Championship, 3 games a week, and is able to hit the ground running and do that. Now, as you said, maybe Rob Edwards thinks Marcus Force is that player. Maybe we'll get a bit of an idea on that. But if he sees Force and Bergzog playing in largely the roles that Carrick saw them in, Boro needs someone who can go in there if anything happens with Conway. They just do.
The other thing, I think, maybe not so much on Ings, but on Brittain and Jones as well. I think what's clear is, with recruitment, like coaching, really, you've got to be flexible, haven't you? And I think there's a clear acknowledgement of what were Boro missing last season, like bit of steel, bit of hardened Championship nous, bit of leadership. Well, Brittain and Jones tick both those boxes. Brittain especially, doesn't he? But also availability. I mean, how many injuries did Boro have last season? Well, both Brittain and Jones have played an awful lot of football. So they tick those boxes. And the other thing I would say is, and again, kind of reluctant to make the Sunderland comparisons on a Boro pod, and we did several times at the end of last season. But for a couple of years, the recruitment models at both clubs is different. But for a couple of years, Sunderland were criticised for being too singular in their approach, just signing young players with potential sell-on value down the line, really lacking experience. Well, last summer, Sunderland recognised that, acknowledged that, and brought in Alan Brown on a free transfer and Chris Meffam on loan from Bournemouth. Meffam was huge for them. And Brown, even though he didn't play an awful lot of football, at every opportunity, Regis Labrise talked about how important he was behind the scenes. Now, the models are different, the examples are different, but I think you can see here with Boro, there's an acknowledgement of the type of player that Boro need, but also maybe the type of character as well, and what was lacking last season.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I the one kind of public statements that Rob Edwards has had with us when we went to see him at Rockcliffe, he basically said that. He said, I want a side with steel. I want a side that can get stuck in. Yes, we want to play football. Yes, we want to entertain, but we can't be a soft touch. And he didn't want to directly draw the comparisons with last season, but I don't think you don't have to be a rocket scientist to do that. I think we can dance around this forever, can't we? Because the elephant in the room here is how much are Boro going to spend this summer at, isn't it? And we all know, and we've seen it, the comments on the vids and everything. Where's the latter laugh money? What's happened with this? What's happened with that? Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because Latterlath goes for what, £22 million, but it's not like you get a £22 million pot of cash. There you go. It's in one hand, it's out the other. That deal is over. Will be over it'll be installments over the length of his contract. So straight away, it's not like Boro are getting all of that money up front that's there to spend. And we know from the accounts how much money Boro have been losing month on month, and so I understand that fans are going to be looking at this summer and saying, we should be spending more money than this. I think the brutal reality that we're starting to see is, listen, I could be wrong. There's still an awful long way of this transfer window to go. Let's see what happens. It doesn't feel like Boro are going to be going out and spending £20 million on a striker, does it? And that's not the financial reality of where Boro are at without parachute payments. As I say, I keep on saying, but losing around £1 million a month, that effectively is the chairman, the owner, has been plugging. So I think that's just where Boro are at. They're going to have to box clever in the transfer market this summer. Now, we're going to get to Hayden Hackney in a minute. Maybe Hayden Hackney leaves, maybe Rav Vandenberg leaves. And if that happens, then, that money surely has to get reinvested. But the idea that there's a massive pot of cash because Morgan Rogers went and Lath went and Coburn, yes, we know that. And money was brought into the club. But clearly some of that money is needed to run the club.
Hackney then. So earlier this week, reports of interest from Ipswich, who are obviously preparing for life back in the Championship after their relegation last season. Parachute payments, as you say there, they're already having a bit of a go this summer. And they were strongly linked with Hackney earlier this week. Now, Kieran McKenna is very good friends with Michael Carrick, who we obviously know rated Hackney hugely, extremely highly. Now, whether that's just putting two and two together, that's just our as to guess as to whether there's any kind of link there, and whether McKenna is leading on what Carrick has maybe said about Hackney previously or whatever. I don't know, guesswork. But what do you make of it? What do you make of that report this week, and what happens next, I guess?
Well, it doesn't surprise me that Ipswich would want him. Sam Morsey's going, isn't he, by all accounts, on a well, I was going to say million, but it won't be million to Q8, whatever. My knowledge of the Q80 currency market is not what it should be, but multi-whatever in Q8. So they need a central midfielder. They're not going to be able to persuade a central midfielder to drop out of the Premier League, you wouldn't think, but they clearly have got money. They've got a lot of parachute payment money there. So who's the best central midfielders in the Championship? Well, Hayden Hackney is clearly one of the best central midfielders in the Championship, isn't he? He's just had a very successful tournament for England under 21s. So, if you're Ipswich and you're thinking, we want the best central midfielder in the Championship, Hayden Hackney is going to be pretty much at the top of your list. Do Boro sell to Ipswich? Does Hayden Hackney want to go to Ipswich? Well, the fact that the rumours came out, but they haven't really gone anywhere, suggests probably no and no. There's been no suggestion that this has gained any kind of traction, or that anything's bubbling along, or that this is going to happen. So, I mean, if you're Hayden Hackney, do you swap Boro for Ipswich? Okay, Ipswich probably more likely to get promoted next season than Boro. I don't think there's any, that's not an outlandish thing to say, is it? Given that they've just dropped out of the Premier League and the squad that they've got and the money they're going to be spending. So, okay, but Hayden Hackney's next move has to be either to a Premier League club or to a Bundesliga club, a Liga and club, a Serie A club. Surely that's the level Hayden Hackney's at, not just swapping clubs in the Championship, isn't it?
Because you run the risk of, where am I a year? Ipswich might steamroll the Championship this season and get back to the Premier League and be better off for their experience in the Premier League last season, and be better placed to make a fight of staying around in the Premier League next season. Or they might just become one of those clubs who's had a year in the Premier League, come back down, and now knock about at the top end of the Championship. If they don't start next season like a house on fire, what happens with McKenna? What happens with McKenna if a Premier League job becomes available in October and McKenna gets plucked to go there? If you were Hackney, you can at the very, very least, you'd at least hold tight to see what else might.
Well, this is Hayden Hackney's big move, isn't it? Yeah. Hayden Hackney is going to go somewhere and sign a 5-year contract. Now, all right, football contracts, they clearly don't bind you to anything. But this is Hackney's big decision, big move. If he goes to Ipswich and, like you say, they get beat in the playoffs next season, they're in and around the playoffs but don't make it, then quite quickly in 3 years' time, Hayden Hackney's just another Championship midfielder. He's better than that. He's got to be better than that. So, if you're Hackney, you're going to wait to see what else is on the table, because there's an awful lot of time still to go in this transfer window. I struggle to think that Ipswich Town will be the best offer put in front of Hayden Hackney this summer. But if it is the only offer, then I think you stay at Boro and say, okay, well, let's see what happens in, let's have a really good season in the Championship. Let's see what happens in January. Let's see what happens in the summer.
Do you think that Premier League clubs are interested? We know that. plenty of Premier League clubs. I've watched Hackney, plenty of Premier League clubs. I admire Hackney. Premier League clubs are interested in Hackney. Do you think it's inevitable that any of them will be firmed up with bids?
It's not inevitable, is it? Because they haven't, to the best of our knowledge, they haven't to this point. Now, like I said, there's still plenty of time left in the transfer window, and clubs as transfer policies will evolve. And if a club suddenly sells a centre midfielder and wants to bring someone in, that changes it. So, I think Hackney's at a level where he should be. His next move should be to either the Premier League or a top European league. Will that offer come? Well, that's the waiting game, isn't it? And I guess that's what Boro are waiting to see as well, because, I don't think Boro have to sell Hayden Hackney this summer, but I think I've always felt it's getting to the stage where this summer felt like the time when a deal might kind of suit everyone. Boro get good money. Hackney gets the chance to play at a higher level. Boro can then reinvest that money and do something with it and improve the squad. It's felt like that's probably going to happen, but it needs someone to come and it needs someone to table a bid that Boro want to accept and be a club that Hackney wants to move to. I'm not sure Ipswich would tick either of those boxes.
No ins, no outs, but we've still talked about transfers for 26 minutes before we talk about...
No ins, no outs.
Yeah. Mansfield then, tomorrow.
Mansfield, yeah. I should be asking you this. What are you expecting? Yeah, what are you expecting? I was going to
say, kind of what are we looking out for, really? What are the things that the answers we might get? I know it's only the first friendly in the UK, but what are the answers we might get? But I think the most obvious one, how much it matters, let's see, but back four or wing backs, that's been one of the things that's been talked about all summer, isn't it? Because Edwards played with wing backs, the kind of early indications, early assumptions were that that's been the way he plays at Boro. Although the kind of suggestions as the last few weeks have gone on appear to be leaning more towards actually it'll be a back four.
Well, Callum Brittain, more of a right back than a right wing back, isn't he?
Yeah, and just one or two other little things you hear. So I think we'll get more of a definitive answer on that. I'm sure if he plays a 4 tomorrow and we ask Edwards afterwards, is that the way you're going to play? I'm sure he'll say, look, I'm fluid. I'll play it.
You need to be able to play a different formation.
Yeah, so but that's one. The other ones mentioned Forst there and Bergzorg, but I think there's several attacking players where the kind of question is, where will they be used? Where's the best position? So, like Morgan Whittaker, is he going to be a firm, nailed-on right-sided attacker this season? Is Forst going to be a forward or a wide player? Is Bergzorg going to be a forward or a wide player? Is Azaz going to be the nailed-on number 10? Riley McGree, after all last season struggle,
he's an interesting
2 years.
Yeah, he's an interesting one.
Yeah, are we seeing flashes or the early indications of McGree coming back to his best? And then Hackney.
Yeah,
Hackney. Does he play? What does Edwards say about him afterwards? And finally, what does Edwards say afterwards about Johnny Howson and the situation there? Because we
and to be fair, again, we've had a lot on that, and it's just it's radio silence really. The club are saying nothing's changed with Johnny Howson. There's an offer there. There has been talks, there will be talks, but a final decision hasn't been made. We've said on these vids kind of endlessly, haven't we, that the longer the time goes on, the less likely it feels that Howson is back with Boro next season. But this will be the first time that Rob Edwards has actually put on the spot and said, have you had conversation with Johnny Howson? Do you want him? Where are we at with this? Because when we asked him about it at his unveiling, to be fair to him, I've just been in this job 6 hours, kind of. I only came yesterday. Yes, it's on my to-do list, but it's it's far too early to have actually done anything about that. Well, it's not now, is it? So that'll be interesting.
And then the other thing, I think, and this is always interesting in pre-season, but the fringe type players, how are they being used? Are there any indications that they might play a more prominent role this season?
Yeah.
So likes of Hamilton, Gilbert, Silvera, who's obviously come back, and then the young lads as well, like players like Law McCabe, George McCormack, Luke Woolston, Braden Johnson, who both went out to Portugal. how much of a role are they going to play this season as well? They're always kind of the fascinating. I think they're always interesting at the start of any pre-season, but especially when it's a new manager and we're first getting eyes on them.
Yeah. And it's an opportunity for you to ease yourself in, Dom. Can you still balance a pie on a shaky laptop table 20 minutes before kickoff with a cup of tea? It's those kind of questions. You can't just get into the season without having a little try and ease yourself back in.
Well, the other thing is, I go away for a fortnight on Sunday on my honeymoon, so I've got to stay focused.
You are
Mansfield on Saturday.
It's kind of be all and end all for you this one.
I can't let
you're back for the week before the start of the season, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm back on the Monday.
You need to show you've still got it.
Well, I need to prove to you really that I'm worthy of doing that Swansea game on the first. That's
exactly it.
You're away, so if I'm not, I don't know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I'm back for the second week, but I'm away then. So, yeah, we'd be in a lot of trouble if you're not.
Well, if you're going to Mansfield on Saturday, enjoy safe travels. Say hello if you pass on the way in and out the ground or whatever. Hopefully, I won't get locked in. We won't tell that story again, but that was a previous Mansfield pre-season experience. Do subscribe to the channel as we say every week. And just a plug, I know we talked about it last week, but our latest subscription offer is still running at the Echo. It's just £6 for 6 months of Boro coverage, or £39 for a full year. But obviously 6 months sees you through the rest of the transfer window, sees you through the rest of pre-season and well into the championship season. I'll put the link in the notes again on YouTube and on the podcast platform. So if you are interested there, massively appreciate any support we get on that. Just follow the link and you'll get more information on how to sign up, but also what's available, what benefits you get from signing up. We appreciate your support there. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your trip to Mansfield if you're going, and we'll be back next time on You Are My Boro. Take care.